Welcome to the Fergus Falls Business Spotlight Podcast, the show that takes a deep dive into local businesses and the individuals that run our community. To guide you along the way, here's your host, Jacob Bittner.
Pretty good stuff there, huh?
Until you ruined it. It was really good.
Until I ruined it. That is an intro by the Blue Red Roses. Rest in peace, Blue Red Roses. Your son, Dan.
Yes.
I didn't make the connection that Dan was the son of the radio legend, Craig Olson. So this is kind of been a fun this podcast series has been awesome. I think you're one of the first people I reached out to to be a guest besides your son, Dan.
Yeah.
And now it's full circle. I mean, it feels like yesterday. It was actually, I was thinking about it this afternoon. It was like almost 20 years ago, probably, or 20 years ago when I was in this room as a high school ski racer.
Wow.
Getting interviewed by you. So
yeah,
the tables have turned. Craig Olson, welcome to the show.
You know what? I like being on your side of the interview.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Being the subject is something I don't do a lot of. So,
well, it's good. It's good. We're going to dig into the life of Craig Olson, the structure of Craig Olson Sports, the history of sports in general. We're going to talk about a history of all of that, history, future outlook of high school sports. I'm really excited for this episode. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. So thank you very much for coming in.
Well, thanks for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not a beer drinker?
No.
Not a beer drinker?
No.
Well, I do have to give a shout out to the sponsors. We have, of course, Outstate Brewing. We're going to get into the beer of the week segment here. I'll be drinking alone this afternoon.
Yeah,
ain't the first time I've drank alone. Won't be the last. We'll be okay. You've got your water. We're staying hydrated. But shout out Outstate Brewing, Stumbeano's, Victor Lundeen's, Lakes Area Grow Co, and Elks Point Bar and Grill. So they're all great supporters of the show. Speaking of Elks Point Bar and Grill, have you been out there?
Not recently.
So I'm not going to ask you out on a date, but I was looking for a date.
Yeah.
Still working on this girl. So I don't know if you're listening. I'm not going to call you out by name, but if you are listening to the show, you should come out and have a smash burger with me on Wednesday night out at Elks Point. They got the buy one, get one smash burgers, and I'm excited. I've never been out there to have a smash burger, but they're doing them this year on Wednesdays. So I think they have expanded hours. You get out there to eat. Ever been out to the fish fry on Friday nights out there?
You know, I'm not a fish guy.
You're not a fish guy?
I'm not. And live in Lakes area, I'm not a fish guy.
Well, they've got, the buy one, get one burgers on Wednesdays. They've got wings and beer deals Thursdays, the steak and fish fry Fridays. You're not a drinker either?
I'm not.
Wow.
But I eat burgers. Buy one, get one. I'm there.
Be there. That maybe me and you, it's Wednesday night. Me and you, we'll go get some smash burgers tonight, okay?
Tonight's the night.
Tonight's the night. It's Wednesday night. We'll go get some smash burgers. And if you feel like Bloody Marys on the weekends, they're there for you. This beer of the week today is Blue Northern Light. So if you're tracking along, people, you can go into Outstate, let them know. It is episode 95 of the podcast, and we're talking about the Blue Northern Light. So if you go in there and say, hey, I listened to the Fergus Falls Business Spotlight, and I heard about Blue Northern Light on episode 95, you will get $1 off a beer. So take advantage of that. Go in and try this delicious beer. I'm going to give it a little crack here. It's described as clean and clear like the skies of outstate Minnesota. This full-flavored lager shines from an all-malt grain bill and finishes with a touch of citrus from a late addition of Amarillo hops. So light, crisp, refreshing, malty, and clean. And more for me. So thank you. Well, I get this open here. Give me a little bit of your background. Start way back. I like to ask people childhood, where they were born, kind of a little bit about their life growing up.
It all started in a 5,000. No, that was Ted Knight on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Anyway, I was born in 1955 in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, where my parents were born, and my grandparents, all four of them, lived there. So,
did you know Bob from? Have you known Bob Layton for a while before you started working for Layton Media?
I remember Bob Layton when he was, and maybe Jeff more than Bob because Jeff was younger. But when I worked, my first radio job was with KDLM, Al Layton hired me back in 1970. I was in high school, and I was doing part-time work, and every now and then these Layton kids would be running around in the studio. And I think it must have been Jeff. I don't know if he remembers this, but I think I've shared this with Jeff. He used to come in and shoot the announcers with his toy guns. He'd come in the room, and we'd have to do the, oh, you got me, you know. But, yeah, so I've known Bob and Jeff for quite a while and actually graduated with one of their sisters, Patty, and knew of Michelle.
One of the
Mike.
9. There was 9 of them.
Yeah.
I found that I just interviewed Bob. I went down to St. Cloud and got an interview with him. Great story, cool story about that family and the growth of the company here. So, so growing up in Detroit Lakes. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I have 2 Al Layton stories that you might be interested in.
I'm interested. Let's hear them.
Well, number one, I was working one of my first full-time shifts when I was hired full-time out of high school after I'd worked part-time. And I'm signing on, okay, something that I haven't done, and you have to get up. We're going on at 5:30 in the morning. That was before 24-hour cycles. So I had to be there on the air at 5:30, and I overslept. You don't want to do that. So I'm sitting there rushing into the studio, and I get in like 6 o'clock, and I fire up the transmitter, and I sit down, and the national anthem's playing, and the back door opens, and I turn around, and it's Al Layton, the owner. Gulp. And Al's, I think he's still in his pajamas. He has a trench coat on to cover, but he said, "Oh, you are here." And I said, "Yes, Mr. Layton, I'm here." And he said, "Well, I don't know what I was going to do, but somebody had to be here." And I said, "I'm really sorry, it won't happen again." And it didn't, but Al was very gracious about that. And then when my wife and I were getting married in 1975, we were planning a Western U.S. honeymoon, and didn't have a lot of money. So Al and I had turned in my notice we were going to move out of state, and Al called me into his office and he said, "I've got a due bill here, Friendship Inn's due bill. It's good at every Friendship Inn in the country if they have room, and I'd like that to be your wedding gift from us." It's like, whoa. Thanks, Al. So my wife and I spent a few nights at Friendship Inns in western United States country, Wyoming and Utah and all over Colorado, on Al Layton for our honeymoon. So, and Al, as I left, said, "Well, it expires the end of September anyway." So, but what a great gift.
So you go way back with the Layton family.
I do.
From like well before this station was acquired by the Laytons. You're connected with that family way back. Awesome. So growing up in Detroit Lakes.
Yep.
What did your parents do?
My dad worked for Northwestern Bell Telephone for 30 years.
Okay.
And my mom worked at Wallen's Red Owl.
Okay.
Yeah, when it first opened, she was in the produce department.
So where do you get your, and Dan has it too, I just know Dan got it from you, but where do you guys get that outgoing in the media person, in those personalities, musicians, media?
My uncle is Oates LeGrand, who I don't know, do you know Oates?
I don't know of Oates LeGrand. Wow. Shame on me.
See, it's becoming that way. Everybody knew Oates, and there's a lot of people out there going, "He doesn't know Oates." But Oates was my uncle. He married my dad's sister, and Oates was a legendary broadcaster. He was named Sportscaster of Rural America by Sports Illustrated in 1985 or 86. They did a story on him in Sports Illustrated.
Yeah. I've got some old names from some like original announcers, but Oates wasn't.
No.
My assistant didn't grab his name out of the ethos.
But he's sure known around this area.
Yeah.
And he was a teacher and a coach also.
Gotcha. So you kind of watched him throughout his career growing up, and that was what planted the seed in you, or the spark to kind of get into this.
When we lived in Brainerd, Oates came to broadcast a Fergus Falls Brainerd basketball game. And I went to the game as a kid. I was probably 10. And Oates is sitting front and center. I mean, center court, talking to the fans back in Fergus Falls about the game. And I thought, man, this is really cool for him to be sitting right there. And he came over to the house afterwards, and I told him he had a great seat, and He said, yeah, and I don't even have to pay for it. In fact, I get paid to sit there. And I'm like, hey, that sounds like a good gig, you know? So I guess it was in my mind even back then.
So he was he the sports guy before? Well, we'll get to maybe the fill in of the sport. But he did sports up until you did sports?
Yeah.
It was a family, sort of a seamless family thing?
Pretty much, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
That to me is so cool. Like
It is.
Like one of the wildest things is like when you see like our city attorney Rolf Nickelmo. Like his dad, I think, was a city attorney. So it's like how long of a like it's almost like some monarch legacy that you guys have in the community. It's really interesting how you can go from family to another family member doing the same thing. It's very much so building a legacy, you know?
Someday your son or daughter may be doing a podcast like this.
Maybe looking for prospects, you know, still looking for prospects. You know?
Okay.
So growing up, graduated from Detroit Lakes?
Yes.
And what year did you graduate high school?
73.
73. And then you went to college for...
I did not go to college.
Nice. Okay.
No, I was working part-time in radio. And actually, college grads or Brown Institute Radio College in the Twin Cities, graduates would come and we'd hire them. And I'd wind up training them because when you go to the radio school, you never work in a real radio setting out in the community. You're in the radio studio at the college. So they needed to learn some things, and I got to train some of them back when I was 19.
So you weren't in college.
No.
You just went right into the field, and then you were training the kids that were going to college for
Exactly.
it. That is such a good like metaphor or visual representation of what can happen, though, if you get into the work field right away out of high school. Especially our generation, so much was pushed. Go to college, do your thing, get your degree and all that. But you can make a lot of money, and within a couple of years, you're training the people that have been going to school for this.
And on-the-job training is great. I mean, people who've been in the industry, been working out there in the public, you know, great way to learn. So I had some great training.
Now, was that with Leighton? You started working with him right out of high school. Interesting. And then you left the company with your wife when you guys got married?
We wanted to get out of town, out of state. So we moved to Missouri for 3 years, went to Utah for 3 years, and then came back to the area. And that's when I was wondering where to go into radio in Minnesota, because I'd been gone for 6 years, didn't know what the field looked like, you know, as far as openings. I went to visit Oates. He and my Aunt Eunice lived on East Battle Lake. And we went and visited them, and I said, hey, Oates, where is there a job opening that you know of in Minnesota? He said, Fergus Falls. I said, Oates, you're in Fergus Falls. He said, well, I'm retiring. He was 65. Wow. He was going to turn 65. And he said, I just want to do games. I don't want to do any of the other stuff. So you go talk to Bud Nornis. So Bud was the general manager, their program director at the time. So I went and talked to Bud Nornis and got the
He's
job.
a big AM radio guy. Bud, shout out Bud Nornis if you're listening. Big AM radio guy, big fan. You know,
great guy. Yeah, I love Bud.
Interesting. Yep. I'm learning stuff because I didn't make the connection that Bud Nornis ran this place.
He was the operations manager or program director back then, and then he was GM for a while as well, and then he got into this bigger job called politics.
Yeah. Something bigger job, less fun, more important.
Bud was great to work for great to work with.
I bet. Awesome. So, did you do any radio stuff out in Utah?
I did. Yep.
That was so your whole career. You've been in radio since
forever.
You've never done really anything else but radio.
Just the website stuff.
The website stuff. What do you do for websites?
CraigOlsonSports.com. You have heard of it?
I have heard of it.
Okay.
Yes. You build websites?
No.
I
just run that
Just
one.
run your website. So it's just like running your own website.
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Which kind of part of the game, I suppose, huh?
Yeah.
It's kind of part of the game.
Well,
but
came down to it.
you got to learn that stuff though. Yep. So did you took over then as a sports caster
director
for the company here when it was Lakes Radio at the time, or what was it even before that?
1981, Jerry Pappenfuss was the owner. They didn't call it Lakes Radio at the time. Jerry, it was Lakes Radio under Jerry, and that's who the Laytons bought the stations from. But it was just an AM and an FM when I came here, 103 and 1250. And then KJJK started by Jack Brush, a few years later, and then when the Jerry Pappenfuss bought KJJK, there were now 4 stations under the umbrella of Lakes Radio. That's when it became Lakes Radio, I guess, which would have been about 97.
Okay.
And then the Laytons bought in whatever year it was, 2017,
2016, something
yeah,
like
somewhere
20
in there.
teens. Yep.
Yeah. Time goes so fast.
Interesting.
But, yeah.
So have you been an employee for the company for the whole time? Or how are you structured? And you can talk about this however you want to. If it's not something you feel like making public, we don't have to. But I'm always interested in the structure behind people's businesses, whether you're an individual entity or you're a company employee.
I have been employed in Fergus Falls Radio since 1981, either as an employee or a contract employee.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wow, interesting. And a lot of your stuff is like a lot of your stuff nowadays is contract work through us.
I'm actually an employee, considered part-time employee.
I never see you in. I hardly ever see you in here.
Well, you're not here at 11:30 at night.
Is that when you come in?
Sometimes after games, if
okay. And I assume you do a lot. Do you do your cuts for the morning? You come in at night and do those cuts here, or do you do those at home?
I am live at home through the magic of technology.
Okay, so you do on-site right from your house.
Yes. Every morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is, and I'm learning this too because I know some of our shows, our radio, 96.5 morning show, for instance, is the St. Cloud
Satellite
or they're they do that show for a couple different markets, right?
Right.
So, your morning stuff is live. I thought it was pre-recorded. That stuff is or close to real time. I mean, there's always that delay on there, whatever that 30-second delay is on that stuff. But interesting.
Yeah, I get to connect with Greg Brady every morning on 1250 and Miles Riker on Z103, and
there you go.
I do some. Miles pre-records my KJ.
That's what I hear. I listen to KJ in the morning, and I always hear your pre-recorded stuff on KJ. So that's probably why. And I'm still learning. There's a lot to learn about all the different productions on all the different stations here. So I'm still learning all that stuff. But cool. Well, should we get into this industry history deep dive, the history of sports? Why not, huh?
I would hate to have all this great research that your crack research team did, not be referred to. So,
all right, let's get into it here. We've got a history of sports and some key developments here. So ancient origins, we're looking at like prehistoric times and into ancient Egypt. You had the evidence of sporting activities like running, wrestling, swimming, and other sports such as javelin throwing, high jump. I assume that fighting seems like naturally that was probably like the first thing that people did. Like we have a difference and then we're going to sort it out. And then or running. That's just interesting to think about what the sports would have looked like back then. But then obviously you had ancient Greece, the birthplace of the Olympic Games in 776 BC. Again, mainly track and field events, some boxing, it looked like back then. And then that ended in 393 by Roman emperor, who was a pagan sports. The Olympics were pagan sports. So the rise of the Roman Empire, whatever they were trying to do with that in the 3rd century we couldn't have the Olympics anymore for some reason. So
Theodosius said, forget it.
He said no more.
Okay.
So that paved the way for the gladiator games, which,
Yikes.
Having that been said, hindsight's 2020, maybe we should have kept the Olympics because that opened up like a crazy 300-year period. 3, 4, maybe 500-year period of these gladiator games. And that's a long, so when I think of that gladiator movie or that period of time, I think of it as like a short little period of history. The Colosseum was active for longer than the United States has been a country.
That is bizarre. I never thought of that either, Jacob. Nope. You have unearthed some things there that I...
It is an insane realization. So from there, you kind of got into the medieval Europe where we got a little more civil. We started doing some jousting and knighting and sports like that. And then you had the Asian influence with martial arts kind of coming in sort of around the 5th to 8th century, sumo wrestling, some different martial arts. England, it looks like in 1863, soccer was invented, or football. So the Football Association was created in 1863. I believe the sport probably existed before that, but the Football Association was formed in 1863. Obviously, the United States sports kind of started to come in a little bit later. Baseball started to become popular in the mid-19th century. The first recorded game being in 1846. So
I didn't cover that one.
You didn't cover that one.
No.
Well, and it doesn't look like they got, we'll get into, let's see, like the first announced team games and all that stuff, but a little bit later. The Olympics were revived in 1896. So it was 1,500 years we spent without the Olympics. And then you had the Major League Baseball formed officially in 1869. National Football League was established in 1920. So you're starting to see a rise of kind of more of the mainstream sports. We had the first intercollegiate sport competition in 1852, which was a rowing race between Harvard and Yale. That's fairly fascinating. Then by the late 1800s was really when you started to see high school sports popping up, mainly just it would have been like intramural, probably sports to start with. I didn't get information on when traveling sports became a thing. What do you think about traveling sports and the demand it takes on parents and families and the focus that it demands?
I understand why we have them, because competition at the higher levels, you need to have some good skill, and you develop that by playing stiff competition when you're growing up. But I don't like the emphasis on the games, the traveling games. I think there are too many youth traveling games. I'd like to see more practices, than games. But the games are more fun, and to keep the kids interested, you got to have fun things, and games are where it's at. So I don't think we'll ever see that change. Just something we have to live with. I think there's a burnout factor there,
for parents
and for kids.
Yeah,
definitely, because they start traveling so young now. I mean, I did a Otter Hockey History podcast here the last few months. Been putting together that.
Oh, who'd you do that with?
A number of people, from coaches and
Did you
players
host
down
that?
through the years. Yeah.
Oh, do you have a podcast?
Well, I did a podcast run from January through June, middle of June.
How did I not catch wind of that?
I don't know. I don't know, but yeah.
So it's a series about history of sports in Otter Tail
There are
County?
several things about history of sports. It's also kind of a daily sports cast like I do here too. So
what's it called? Come on.
What's my podcast called, Dan?
Plug it.
Dan is my guy. It's called
Craig Olson Sports. Well, look,
it might be.
I'll tell you what. If you're blanking that hard, I'll circle back. Look for the episode description. Look for a link to Craig's podcast in the episode description.
It's called Sports Moments and Memories with Craig Olson.
Okay. So if you look up, I'm guessing if you search Craig Olson on Spotify, you'll find that podcast. Yeah. Awesome. I will certainly check that out. I had
some fun with it. The YouTube.com, we did video and audio on some really great teams. Pelican Rapids 1984 state championship boys basketball team, the Otter 84 boys state tournament team, the Spartan ladies national championship team from 2000-2001, and the Otter Hockey podcast. All of those featured audio and video, and just had a blast reliving all that stuff that I was able to cover it through the years.
So definitely check that out. I will. I would have definitely checked that out prior to doing this had I known it existed, but that's okay. That is okay. I will certainly look into it. That sounds awesome. It looks like in 1903 was the formation of the first state high school athletic association, and that was actually in Wisconsin. So shout out Wisconsin. They do more than just make cheese. They apparently made high school sports as well. Yeah. So
it's good to the Midwest here.
That's right. Yeah. You had, following that shortly, the National Federation of State High School Association, which regulates a lot of that sports stuff now. That was in like 1906, along with the establishment of the NCAA in the same year. So it looked like, throughout the 20s, high school programs began to grow with more schools building athletic facilities and hiring coaches. You had the first sports broadcast on radio in 1921. That was a boxing match between Jack Dempsey and Georges Carpentier. Interesting. A boxing match. We don't. You ever covered boxing?
I've done some TV stuff on boxing, just covering, like interviewing, like I did with you on the skiing. Back.
Yeah.
We did some Lake Region TV, which I was a part of for a few years when they were around. We did a lot of different sports, and one of them was boxing. We did some interviews and talked about the training, showed kids sparring, and it was kind of fun. Yeah.
FIFA was established in 1930. It looks like the 30s and 40s, you saw the rise of sports announcers as a career. So the names mentioned here are Red Barber and Mel Allen, becoming prominent voices in the industry. So those guys paved the way for you to be able to do what you're doing today.
And Mel Allen did things into when I was a kid, he did This Week in Baseball, hosted by Mel Allen. And I didn't know about Mel Allen's previous career as a broadcaster, but he still was producing things into his 70s. So
interesting. The first televised sporting event was a baseball game between Princeton and Columbia. That happened in 1939. 30 years later, you had the introduction of instant replay, which kind of changed the game. Video really changed sports, and streaming is continuing to kind of change sports today. Man. We'll get into that in future outlook, but 1972, Title IV.
Big year.
Title IV.
Title IX.
Or Title IX. What?
Yeah.
Title IX. Yes, I did read that wrong. Title IX passed, and this significantly increases the participation for women in sports. That was the 70s was the year of equality and the movement towards. I mean, you had the Equal Credit Opportunity Act allowing. That we talked about that in the real estate episodes about you couldn't necessarily get a loan sometimes if you were a woman, or they were able to discriminate against you up until they passed that Equal Credit Opportunity Act. And so there was a lot of discrimination that happened. And that's the 70s just isn't that long ago. It's just not that long ago.
Thank you for saying that. Wow. Yeah. Well, like I said, I graduated in 73. So I remember in 1972, we didn't have girls' sports in our high school in Detroit Lakes. They played GAA, Girls Athletic Association, not high school league sponsored sports. And there were just a few schools that did that. But I feel so bad for all the great female athletes that never got to participate in high school sports under the umbrella of the high school league, because there were some great athletes, even in the 60s, 50s, going all the way back, So 72, that was a really good thing. And that made the broadcasting industry, too. We started doing girls' sports, as well. Maybe not right away, because it took a while for them to get established and people to get interested. But, changed that landscape.
We're going to circle back to that Title IX in the future outlook, because I think that there are some very interesting things and pressure from certain people sides politically to work towards a redefinition of that, and some amendments to include certain things. So we'll get into that a little bit. I'm not going to say anything that hasn't been said about opinions on that stuff prior, as far as this transgender movement in sports. But we're going to talk about that future outlook a little bit, because I think it's kind of interesting landscape. It has been very interesting landscape the last few years for sure. But let's see. Yeah, basically 2000s to present with that, as far as history goes, the internet streaming and social media platforms have just really increased the popularity of high school sports. I mean, we just had a meeting with our Grand Forks team yesterday that talked about all of they've been doing streaming for their live sports up there, and they have been getting just huge interest in people streaming these high school sporting events on YouTube. So the exposure for these kids to get internet famous now on TikTok or whatever, prior to being in college or being in the NFL, it exists now. So I don't know if have you seen a lot of that? changed throughout your career?
It's really the last few years has really changed. I mean, cable. I see cables on your list here in the early '80s, and that opened up a lot of opportunity in our industry for broadcasters and camera people and directors and created a lot of jobs. Cable sports networks, and but yeah, now with the streaming, it's amazing what can be done now. And you and I could start a streaming service, Jacob, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, I could do it. Like that, the barrier of entry in digital is nothing.
Right.
It's non-existent. That's what blows my mind about I think it's why it's so hard to get established in the world of podcasting and in the world of anything digital is, it's flooded. It's a flooded, saturated market. Nobody's there to qualify you. Nobody's there to, make sure that you're not a fraud or that you're spewing accurate information. Nobody's there to police or regulate this streaming industry right now. It's very, very interesting. So I'm not sure to what extent we've streamed high school stuff, but I know that Layton's got the equipment now, and we're looking at making that push this year to be more active in that streaming world. So you probably know more about that than I do. Maybe not, but
just scratching the surface here. Stay tuned. There are definitely things in the works.
Yeah. So you might be able to watch. You might be able to catch some high school sports live streaming more so than you have years past in our area this year. So
I do want to say, Jacob, that as far as radio broadcasting of sports, Layton does more than any station in the state of Minnesota. I mean, we do like 200 games a year on our 4 stations.
Wow.
And we've got a great announcing crew with Jason Retzloff and Mark Johnson and Cody Osnes and Bob Roars. And we get Brad Anderson involved from Moorhead. He does some freelance working for us. Dan Scogan worked with us for a long time. And John Peter. We've got great announcers who cover this whole area, and working with the coaches that we get to work with and administrators. You talk about being blessed. I feel like I've really been blessed with this position over the years in working with the people I work with and being able to do what you love to do in a place you love to do it in. Is there anything better?
No. There isn't. There isn't. Yeah. I feel like I'm at the beginning of my journey.
There you go. It's good.
It is a wild thing, when you get into a position where you're like, oh, I love this, and this is like what it fits with me and what I want to do, and this is what life is supposed to be.
If you love what you do for a living, you never work a day in your life. That's
right.
a famous saying.
So, speaking of, that transitions well. Employment outlook for the industry here. We talked about AI with Bob and the ability we use the example of weather, but the ability for AI to take you can get a API or whatever. The API is the information that the weather companies send out, so you can subscribe to their API and get real-time weather information fed to you, right? I don't think we're very far away from an AI being able to absorb that real-time weather information and generate a script and then generate of AI voice to present that information out to people on the radio in extremely up-to-date, real-time fashion. So I don't know what it's going to do to the future of sports broadcasting as far as like weekly updates or daily updates on sports. I mean, I feel like local sports is probably going to be way behind what you're going to see AI do with national sports. But anywhere where there's that real-time data that's available via an API from the internet to send you that real-time data, it's only a matter of time before people have AI models that are processing that data and repurposing it for audio purposes, and thus replacing the need for announcers and broadcasters. But what is your take on the employment outlook for the industry?
Pretty bleak from what you just said.
Well, the creative has to be there.
Yeah, and the personal touch has to be there, I think. I mean, especially in a small community. Communities that we deal with, I don't want an AI guy talking about the Otters or the
No.
Comets or, I mean, let's get that personal
Absolutely.
element and keep it there.
Weather is one thing.
Right. Yeah. But no, kids involved in sports don't need some AI thing produced.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree with you.
And I don't know, what's the driving force there? Is it money? Is it all money? Dollars and cents? Are they saving money by not having a sports announcer do the game and just have the AI do it? Is it all money? I don't know. It's just
everything's always all money.
It eventually gets that way. I guess,
I don't know. I mean, talking to Bob about it, we just talked about it briefly. But as far as how it's going to integrate within our company, he tends to think that it's going to free up the people from doing a lot of the busy work and allow them to focus on creative more. And if that's the case, then it's going to be the people who do choose to utilize it as a tool within their day-to-day to help them be more efficient. Those are the people that are going to have more time for creative and more time to really produce engaging, entertaining content. So that's my hope for it. And the authenticity of a Paul Allen voice or your voice, like it's just so iconic to hear that voice, that repetition of, I mean, Paul Allen is iconic. And in my opinion, you are too. Like you are an icon as far as like people know you by your voice. And that's something that you can't replace that with an AI.
No.
I mean, I would be interested in the quality of, again, Al Michaels is using voice cuts of his voice for some of the Olympics updates. So it's going to be happening. They created a model of his voice, and so they're going to do liners generated by AI based off of his voice. So
Al will not be in Paris, but he will be in Paris.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there's no space or no place for AI and some of the things it can do. I just don't see it replacing human beings in certain positions.
Especially not live. Not live in game play by play. I just think that it requires an ability to process and the emotions involved in a live setting and you can hear and feel that emotion in a game. That's why people listen to the radio. Is because you get the emotion out of it. So I do think though that for updates and little stuff like the stuff you do in the morning, your morning updates on KJ Country, like stuff like that, I don't think we're more than a year or two away from you being able to generate a model based on your voice and just feeding it a script, and then you don't even have to cut that ad.
Won't it sound fake though, robotic? Or
the thing is, right now, yes.
Yeah.
Right now, yes. But some of that stuff's getting really good.
Okay.
Some of that stuff's getting really good. So, how about products and services? What do you do? What games? What do you cover? What sports? All of them?
I've done over 6,000 games, and in those 6,000 are boys basketball, girls basketball, boys hockey, girls hockey, football, volleyball, boys soccer, girls soccer, wrestling. It's even some swimming in the old days with Dave Lindig and Tom Uvis helping me out. That's the key, by the way, for sports you're not real familiar with. Get somebody who is, and just let them carry you, and you just kind of be the host kind of. But I've made my whole podcast out of that. I bring in people who know their industries, and I just kind of drop weird random points and let them talk about their industries. That's why absolutely. I love being the interviewer, because you just pressure. Let them talk about what they know best. Absolutely. It's awesome. Yeah. Let's see. Did I miss any sports? I got off track, which happens to me occasionally.
You named like 6 or 7 of them.
Yeah, I think I named 10, but 10. Who's counting?
Who's counting?
So that's about it. But a lot of games.
Tennis.
I have done some state tennis back in when
track and field.
We've done. I do state track meet reports. I did that for 37 years.
That's not really enough action.
Not play by play
in that.
No, but play by play. The game, the sports I mentioned. Yeah,
interesting. And that's keeps you busy in the summer.
No, summer's light. You know, we don't. We've done some in the past, some Legion ball or VFW baseball or some of that, but not a lot. The interest just isn't as high sponsorship wise or fan wise in the summer because people are at the lake and they're on vacation and doing their things. So we pretty much start with the fall season and go through the winter season and then pick up some spring games, some spring baseball, spring softball.
So what do you do in the summer to stay busy?
Well, relax. Try to relax.
There you go.
The website keeps me busy in the summer. I'm still updating that every day. Plus, it's a planning time. This is a time of year when we schedule. Like I mentioned, we do like 200 games. Okay, well, scheduling that is a challenge.
Yeah.
And trying to get people to cover each game and with their schedules. The guys that I mentioned that we have broadcasting all have full-time careers. So this is a hobby for them.
Yeah.
And we're blessed to have them. They're all very good, talented. But meshing schedules and trying to get all the games covered, that can be a real challenge. So,
yeah. So what's the outlook for are you mainly cover otters? Do you do Hillcrest? Do you do out in the lakes area as well?
We do the Otters. We do Hillcrest. We do West Central area. We do Henning. We do Battle Lake. We do Underwood. We do Ashby. We do Pelican Rapids. And we do pick up some games. Usually when those teams play a team like Rothsay or Barnesville in our area, we cover those also, although they're not our main coverage area. So, but yeah, we do a lot of games.
What do you have to do to get like copyright, or is there a copyright on that? Since you're producing it yourself, you are copyrighted. Nobody can reproduce your content, I'm assuming.
Supposedly.
Yep. But do you have to get a license through these high schools or anything to come cover
Just
their games?
Permission from the ADs. And, for Layton Broadcasting, Layton Media, we have to get approval from the high school league to cover these games. In fact, there's a contract every year that you have to sign with the high school league, and there's some payment. It's not a huge amount. But just so they have some control over who's covering and making sure the content is what it should be and that there aren't any kind of things happening like you were talking about with getting into the social media and doing anything you want to do online with no control, nobody watching you. Well, the high school league wants to have some things to say about that.
Absolutely. So,
yeah.
And as you get into streaming, licenses for streaming and stuff become a little bit more complicated than radio. So
right.
That's what I learned in our meeting
Yes.
with Grand Forks is it gets kind of complicated when you start doing video.
Well, when you get to tournament time with video, you're out of luck because they have exclusive video streamers and video television coverage that the high school league has contracts with. So if you're a video streamer, your season ends at the regular season finish because you're not going to be able to get into the postseason with that.
Are the Otters going to be good this year? In I don't know anything football. Are they going to win any football games this year?
Yeah, they'll be competitive in football. Yeah, I think they're going to have a good year. Just looking at what I know now, but we don't know a lot right now because
it's true.
It hasn't started yet, and you never know what those new kids are going to bring.
That's right.
That's right. But I think it's going to be a good year for the Otters. Yeah, I think some of the area teams, like Hillcrest girls and boys basketball, are really going to be good for the next few years, I think. And a lot of area teams, Pelican Rapids and Henning in basketball, are always good. It's going to be fun. Underwood always has great volleyball. Their girls basketball's been to state a couple of years in a row. And, there's a lot to like about what's going on in our area sports.
Awesome. Well, let's get into future outlook of high school sports then. This is what the AI had to say about the speculation of the future of high school sports. So it says we're going to see an increased emphasis on safety, continued development and implementation of concussion protocols and other injury prevention measures. We're going to see a greater focus on mental health support for student athletes. I think that there's a lot of things that have gone into the mental health crisis that our country is facing. Probably head injuries and sports injuries at a young age probably haven't helped that. I don't know if they've been the main cause of it. I think social media has more to say about that than sports. But We're going to see technological integration. We're going to see enhanced use of analytics, use of performance analytics and AI analyzed video. All of that stuff is going to become more prevalent in keeping up to date. Wearable technology such as armbands or wristbands to track performance metrics and all of that. We're going to see, we talked about it, the growth of live streaming for sporting events, specifically a high school level. I think that you've seen really good streaming quality that's been available for professional sports for a long time. And that barrier of entry is now low enough that you can get into it on a high school and a local level. So we're going to see more of that. You're going to see more viral kids going viral on TikTok and it getting them a scholarship somewhere, you know, stuff like that. All of that stuff is going to play into the future of the landscape. Esports and non-traditional sports. Ever covered anything with esports? Have you ever done anything with, does Fergus have an esports team? I think they do. I know Alexandria does.
I guess I'm not sure on that. We haven't done anything on that, but I'm sure eventually it'll play into the picture. Yeah.
So yeah, you'll see the social media stuff. Policy and regulation will continue to be updated throughout high school sports to ensure fairness, safety, and equity in high school sports. Potential changes in eligibility rules and transfer policies could address, you know, we could address transferring and stuff like that.
Or
and
that name, image, and likeness thing that college deals with now, and the transfer portal and all that. I think it's just causing all kinds of bad vibes about college sports. So I don't think it's good. It's good for the individual athlete. Like Caitlin Clark didn't have to make a lot of money in the WNBA because she's got, you know, millions of dollars in endorsements from the NIL stuff that is now legal for college athletes and even high school.
That is really interesting. It's almost like it felt like college sports was kind of that barrier between the money side of sports that exists in professional sports and the authenticity of playing for the love of the game that exists when you're a kid.
Yep.
So now that it's blended down another level, how close are we to it blending into this? I know that, again, from our meeting with Grand Forks, who's been in the streaming game, and they've sold a lot of advertising on high school sports, and it's raised a lot of questions and concerns with people about whether or not our company should be profiting off of high school student athletes or not. So there's that trickles all the way down. You know, it's going to continue to trickle down. I think that you need access to that stuff, and you can't provide access to that stuff for, you know, no one's going to just do it out of the kindness of their heart. So I think there's a fine line between monetizing kids and being able to give people access to the events that I think that they want access to. So
it's a slippery slope.
It is a very slippery slope. Yeah, because you want sports to be about the game and the love of the game. You don't want it to be about money. You don't want it to be about the industry. You want it to be about having fun and being safe and being able to look back at that as a positive period of your life where you got to play high school football. You know, so
no, that line between amateur and professional is not there anymore. You know,
it's very interesting.
Yep.
So we don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but have we seen it in Minnesota? Has it come up with transgender athletes, specifically biological males who have transitioned to be a female, and they're them looking to compete in high school sports? Has that happened? Has it been an issue that's come up in Minnesota?
I have not heard of any. Maybe the Twin Cities is different. I'm not familiar with what's happening down there so much, but I have not heard of anything locally or regionally, you know, at all in that regard. So, but I'm sure it's coming.
I'm sure it is. I mean, you saw with, obviously, Leah Thomas was the big, the swimmer, and I think she was pretty good at. I think she's pretty good at swimming. I think she won a little. I think she won some stuff, didn't she? Like she was clean. She won some medals. You know, so it's a slippery slope, and I think that when you get into that redefinition of or amending Title IX, if that's something that they decide that they're going to do at some point to offer inclusion to, again, I'm not saying anything that people haven't said before, but offer inclusion to basically somebody who is not of the sex that they should be competing against, offer them rights to compete against them. So it's a very slippery slope. I tend to think that most people are on the side of wanting to keep sports separated or keep them separated by biological.
That's where I fall.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
biological males should compete against biological males. Biological females should compete against biological females. That's where I'm at. I know there are differing opinions.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how controversial that statement is. It's amazing how controversial that statement is. It is.
That's the way I feel.
And like, I'm not signing up to fight Ronda Rousey by any means, but I don't think that. I think
That's a good decision.
There's a reason why men and women don't get in the octagon to fight against each other.
Right. Yeah.
And so I do think that when you get into the topic of gender roles or different, that's just a deep conversation that gets very gray. And in my opinion, at least you can't deny the differences between men and women biologically and the need to separate them. So,
yeah.
But that's all I have to say about that. Anything else you want to add about the future, where you feel like the future of high school sports here in Fergus? How old are you?
I'm 69.
You're 69?
I will be 70 in March at the end of
Oh my gosh. Are you going to be a sportscaster till the day you die?
When people ask me when you're going to retire, I always wonder if they mean I should. But I always say I'm either going to die at the mic or the computer, one of the two. And
I'll be working on that website.
Exactly, at 2 a.m, whatever. But I always say I hope it doesn't happen, like at the state championship game, and Jacob Bittner's on the free throw line with a chance to win the game, and I go, and here's the free throw. And I'm gone, and the listeners are going, what? What happened? No, it's... Anyway, I don't think I'll ever retire as long as I have the mental faculty to still do what I do. I think I'll do it at some level. The one thing I do want to change is the number of games I do every year. Because after 6,000 games in 50 some years of broadcasting, I'm tired. It's taken its toll, and I want to be home at night because that's a lot of nights away and on the road. And road games, I'd like to pretty much do away with those, and we'll see.
Yeah. Do you do like 4 nights a week?
Sometimes. Wintertime is, and sometimes, double headers, Spartan basketball double headers. And and the tough ones are the 4 games a week when you have 3 of them on the road. You drive into Thief River one night and St. Cloud one night, and you get home at almost midnight, and then I do on my website stuff until 2 or 3 in the morning, and get up and do the sports in the morning at 7. Well, I could do that for many years, but it's getting harder. So, yeah.
And it's the tough thing about having a career on the microphone is when you're having a bad day, you still have to get on the microphone.
True.
And I'll tell you, I've had some podcasts where I just wasn't in the mood to talk to somebody or wasn't in the mind space, too much personal stuff going on to be able to focus on their story. I'm sure that happens where you're having a bad day, but you have to go record this stupid game. How do you deal with that, the bad days at work? Would anyone know you were having a bad day if they listened to you on the radio?
Only if it was probably sickness related or voice related, if I have some issues there, which I've had in the past. But no, and you're right. That's something you just have to be able to, the show must go on type of a mentality, and I've done some games on days that I'd rather not have done a game. But thankfully, what has happened in those situations is once I start doing the game,
you feel better.
You do. It's like therapy. I mean, it really is.
Yes.
And I have a hard time, and this is weird, but I have a hard time going to games that I'm not covering.
Okay.
When I'm sitting in the stands, I'm like, man, I should be doing this game. It's really hard to just go as a spectator, But so I think it is therapy. If you have a bad day, if you do something you enjoy doing, it's going to make your day better.
Yeah. What's your favorite sport to cover?
That question, I get that a lot.
Yeah.
And my answer, kind of my pat answer is whatever game I'm doing at the time.
Whatever you're doing at the
Because, and here's why, because it's kids competing in a sport they excel in and love to play. And that brings me joy to see kids doing that, something they really love doing, and watching the response of the fans to the effort that these kids are putting out on the floor just to entertain you or on the field, you know. So yeah, I'll break it down though. I'll tell you I guess I would say I can't even pick one, Jacob. I love baseball. I'm a big baseball fan. And what I will say is the two hardest sports to broadcast, I think, are baseball and hockey. And it's for two very different reasons. Baseball's got a lot of downtime. You have to fill with information, stats, whatever you got. And hopefully you have a color commentator for baseball, because I've done enough baseball games over the years on my own that by the time you get to the 7th or 8th or extra innings, you're getting tired, and the listeners have to be getting fed up of hearing just you. So if you have another guy to bounce things off, that's great.
Yes.
And the other one, hockey, you just have to be so focused all the time when you're doing hockey, because it's constant. I mean, players are changing on the fly. The puck is moving fast. It's up and down the ice. Each team gets one timeout. It's 17-minute periods in high school now, where you just have to be so engaged for that whole time. So they all have their individual challenges. And I love covering basketball because it's a confined, area.
Yep.
And there's only 5 players on each side at one time. So and you can see their face, you know. They don't have a helmet covering their face. So I really love doing all of them. The one sport I struggle most with is soccer. I was not a soccer player.
So you don't know the rules. You don't naturally know the rules of the game and the flow of the game.
And the terminology. There's different terminology in soccer. And soccer on the radio is really difficult for me because, frankly, not a lot happens that can interest the listener, because how many times does the ball go out of bounds? Oh, we got to throw in. Oh, it went out again. Okay, we're going to throw it in again. Oh, okay, here's a free kick. All right, there's just not a lot.
So much of the game happens in the middle 3/4 of the field, and it's just boring. Yeah.
For radio, it's not a good game.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't think.
I could see that. I could see that. Soccer is it's a television sensation. Right. It is. It's fun to watch the World Cup.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But the highlight. The highlight clip of the radio announcer going crazy for that one time in the 90 minutes that they actually score a goal, then I'm sure that's a great highlight.
One of my favorite stories about soccer is I did a 0-0 playoff game, Hillcrest and St. John's Prep. So then they haven't scored for 80 minutes. So what do? They put 10 more minutes on the clock. I was like, wait a minute, guys, hold on. You're not going to score in 10 minutes because you just didn't score in 80, all right? So they didn't. It was 0-0. And then we went to the shootout, finally. But it's like, anyway.
Oh, I love it. Well, I am fascinated by your career. Did you work other jobs in high school prior to beginning into sports announcing? So you only know sports announcing. That's it. That's awesome. That is so cool. I think you're the second person that I've had on the podcast, I think, that has been in their job or in their position and never worked in another industry doing anything in their life. So that is a crazy thing. The other guy is Luke Loeffler from the bowling alley.
Yep.
He's only worked at bowling alleys.
Yep.
I just think that's awesome. That is so cool. So how about biggest surprise that you've had hit you throughout your career? Biggest surprise. I don't want to load it, but maybe like what was harder or what surprised you more than you anticipated throughout your career as a broadcaster?
That's a tough question, Jake. I don't know that I have an answer to that. I haven't been surprised by much over the years. Maybe just the fact that I've done it as long as I have is a surprise.
How about mistakes? You got a biggest mistake that comes to mind?
I guess I can say it on the podcast, can I? Well,
You can't say it?
I can't. I guess. It's embarrassing. Anyway, I was doing a baseball game with a friend of mine in Utah. We did 2-man games, and it was a big rivalry. Bear River and Box Elder high schools, like 10 miles apart, and they're big rivals.
Okay.
So we're sizing up the game and the pitching performance, the different pitchers, and we're getting all excited about it, and we're ready to go to break, and I said, well, there's no doubt about it, Jeff. This is going to be a great pitching match. Okay, now that was embarrassing for me because I don't like to misspeak, and especially like what. Jeff looks at me and he starts laughing, and I'm like, well, we'll be right back. What do you do? How do you get out of that? But
I'm sure you fumbled. You got to fumble over words and names. Names have got to just be atrocious to try to pronounce. Sometimes.
Hey, my biggest complaint about broadcasters is when they mispronounce names. I try to get the pronunciations right before the game. I want to go to the coach and say, how do you say this? I want to make sure I get this right. Mm-hmm. Then you sound it out and you keep saying it in your mind. It's like, so inevitably you're going to make a mistake on a name. I mean, it happens.
I don't know if you ever got Bittner right. You probably got Bittner right back in the day. I think you got it.
So,
nobody ever did though. So if you did, you were the only one that ever did.
As yours is Buettner.
Yeah.
So
it's very interesting.
Yeah, Buettner.
Yeah, whatever.
Right,
whatever.
Bittner,
Anything but Bittner.
See, I probably asked you or your coach, how do you pronounce your last name? Because I don't want to get it wrong. I don't.
Well, this was awesome. This was cool. Coming full circle, getting you in the seat. I got one more question for you on the sheet.
Okay.
And that is best business advice.
Do what you love to do for a job. Like I said it earlier, never work a day in your life. I know people that get up on Monday and just are like, oh, it's Monday. Got to go to work. I get up on Monday and think, okay, what's on the schedule this week? Who are we covering? Where are we going? Who's playing who? It's fresh every morning. It's just, it's something. I would say do what you love to do. If it's in your power to do that, do it. And
if you feel like it's not within your power to do it, work your ass off until it is within your power to do it. Work hard and it will be there for you. So,
right.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you want the people to know about you, local sports, anything that you do, anything?
No, I just feel very blessed and thankful to be doing what I'm doing, to have done it as long as I have, and I've met a lot of great people and been able to work with a lot of great people through the years. I've seen some great local sports history, been able to call some great local sports history. It's just been a great ride. So.
Awesome. Well, Craig, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. Appreciate all you guys, all you listeners, sponsors, Outstate Brewing, this Northern Light Lager, Stumbeano's Coffee, Victor Lundeen's, Lakes Area Grow Co., and of course, Elks Point Bar and Grill. So thank you guys very much for listening. We will be back with more. Thank you, Craig, very much.
Hey, good luck with everything, Jacob.